Okay, well, many thanks indeed for the invitation to just share some ideas with you. If you like, from my experience of promoting action research in different parts of the world. And what I'd like to do is just to focus on this idea of the future of action research in a diverse and changing Canada, and the idea of a call to action in teacher education. Because I think we need to focus on action research to enhance professionalism in education. And action research, with its action reflection cycles, provides us with a real focus on our practice. Because action research requires us all to take responsibility for trying to improve our practice and also to generate knowledge. That's why it's action research. It's the action to improve our practice. It's research to try to contribute to the professional knowledge base. And that's why the future of action research, I think, in Canada requires all the panel members that are here today representing different sectors to combine together to enhance the significance of the work and the research being carried out by each one of you in your own contexts. My plan is just to speak for 10 minutes and to see if I can actually stimulate you to access some work that has already been going on in Canada through the website Action Research Canada, through the original journal, which was the Ontario Action Researcher, which is now the Canadian Journal of Action Research, to try to encourage everyone to publish their accounts of their practice in these public forums. Now, all I mean by action research is a way of improving our practice through our own questions of the kind, how do I improve what I'm doing? And that, for me, is the fundamental question of the action researcher, working to improve what it is you're doing in your own practice. As, for example, if we're interested in educational practice in classrooms, we're trying to improve and enhance the learning of our students. So that question is key, as is our responsibility for exploring its implications. How do I improve what I'm doing? Now, as you go through that kind of inquiry, I'm saying the action reflection cycles, many people around the world have found these very helpful. As you actually say what your concern is to improve your practice, you connect it into the fundamental values you use to give meaning and purpose to what you do. You imagine what to do, you act on it, and as you're acting, you're gathering data to make a judgment on your effectiveness, and then you evaluate your influence in relation to your values and in terms of your students' learning, or if you're working with colleagues, in terms of their learning. And then you produce what we call a validated explanation of your educational influence in your own learning. And in the group that you've got here today, if you have a validation group of, say, between 3 to 8 people, they can actually help you to strengthen the validity of your explanations of your educational influence with 4 questions that are derived from the work of this sociologist called Jürgen Habermas. And you ask each other in the validation groups, how can I be more comprehensible in what I'm writing? That is, am I making sense to you? How can I make more sense? The second question is very important, and it asks your validation group to help you strengthen the evidence base you use to justify your claims to know what you're doing and the influence you're having. And this is a crucial research question. How can you strengthen the evidence base that you're offering to justify your claims that you're having an educational influence in the learning of your colleagues or students? And the third question, which I think is particularly interesting in Canada because of the values base of the Canadian culture, is can you show in your action research account that you are aware of the cultural and historical influences on your practice and your writings? And Canadians have come out of the global crisis of capitalism very well. I mean, we've even appointed your Canadian banker, Mark Carney, as the member of our bank because of the work that he did to literally keep you clear economically of most of the worst of the crisis. Now, this has influenced what Canadians are able to do. I hope that's clear, that the historical and cultural influences on your practice are something you bring into your explanations. The fourth criteria is something I think everybody in the room will be literally entranced by, because it's to do with authenticity. that what you do in your action research accounts is to show over time and interaction that you are truly committed to the values that you claim to hold. And these are very important as you explain your educational influence. Now, action researchers don't just take learning as the central concept, because his history shows that many people learn things which are essentially, they can be antisocial, they can be very destructive. History is littered with ideas of cultures that were highly damaging. And cultures have actually communicated that to their citizens. Like, I was born in 1944. I'm very sensitive to what happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. A whole culture learnt things which were anti-human. So this idea of authenticity is very important, that you try to show how your values are contributing to the flourishing of humanity. I hope I'm being clear here, because your explanations are of your educational influence in learning. It's not just learning, you actually bring your values in action research to justify your claim that you're having an educational influence in your own learning. Now, that is how I'm distinguishing the action research process and saying the future of action research in Canada rests upon professionals like yourself asking that and answering and researching that question, how do I improve what I'm doing? Offering your knowledge to the public domain, first of all in validation groups, often in non-accredited programs, and then I would suggest that you try to enable your knowledge to be accredited for master's and doctoral degrees in higher education. Now, there is a difficulty here, because not many universities have changed their standards of judgment. They're still operating with very traditional views of knowledge and theory. So you might find that you've got an issue with the university about legitimating the nature of your knowledge with your values. I hope I'm making sense here, because I had to work at the University of Bath to change the regulations about the submission of research degrees. Until, for example, 2004, they did not accept multimedia. They did not accept visual data in research degrees. Now, a group of us on a Senate committee managed to change the regulations with the approval of Senate to approve the multimedia narratives through e-media that could be put into a university for accreditation. Several universities, and I had to actually work very hard to get the I in an action research question, accepted as a legitimate question for research for master's and doctoral degrees. I've still got letters from 91 and also from 2006 of universities actually saying that we don't accept the personal pronoun, the I, in the research questions. Now, when you come across this kind of constraint, I think you've actually got to question the way in which the action research is being accepted in the university. Now, I mentioned that because, as I say, the action research future requires us to actually change what the universities are counting as valid knowledge. Now, I'll just move on now to suggest ways in which you can make public your knowledge, because this is very important in terms of the action research and its future, and especially in terms of teacher education. The values you use to explain your practice are not ones that the universities are used to. I'll just give you one or two examples. If you go into the Educational Journal of Living Theories, and you can access that from actionresearch.net, you will see that the December 2013 issue is mainly constituted by Canadian action researchers. And they've actually brought new living standards of judgment into the academy. Love as a standard of judgment is quite an unusual standard for universities to accept. Yet the Canadian action researchers who are creating their living theories, and those are explanations of educational influence. That's what a living theory is. It is your explanation of your influence in your own learning, in the learning of others, and in the learning of the social formation in which you're living and working. Now, the problem of the universities accrediting action researchers like yourselves is that if you use something which you're passionate about, such as a love for learning, or as some of my researchers have actually put into the Bath University, a passion for compassion, they're not used to those kinds of standards. The standards that are full of energy-flowing values. The values that, if you're honest with each other, really do matter to you. Because I imagine everybody in the room recognises that their passion for education, their love for what you are doing, is very important in sustaining your motivations. So you'll need to really validate your values and love and freedom, compassion, justice, care for others are vital, I think, in explaining your influence in the learning of your students. So this idea of bringing your values as explanatory principles into your action research is, I think, crucial for the future of action research in Canada. And not only in Canada, but I would argue throughout the world. And in terms of teacher education, it's a really crucial point in enhancing professionalism. Because as you talk today about what really matters to you, I hope everybody will be asking each other, well, what kind of evidence can you show that you've had an influence in the learning of your students? And it's a really crucial question to try to work out your influence over time with your students or your colleagues as you are responding to their influence. I hope, again, I'm making sense there, that all of you will know that what you want to do is to enhance the education of your students or colleagues over time. And the way you do this is to respond to them as they come to you with questions or inquiries. You are responding to them over time and having an influence in their learning. There is very little work done to show that influence. And I do hope that you will go into Action Research Canada, the actual website, Action Research Canada, and access the narratives of Canadian researchers in about 8 volumes of what is called Passion in Professional Practice. These are non-accredited accounts from teachers which are the bedrock of the future of action research. It's getting those inquiries started, it's actually sharing them, and you'll find these illustrations and examples in the Canadian website Action Research Canada. As well as that, you'll find in Blue Water, the Blue Water Action Research Network, you'll find that the researchers have also been accredited with their master's programs. And some of you may have come across Jackie DeLong's work in relation to a culture of inquiry. When she was a superintendent of schools, she researched her own practice and actually was awarded her doctorate for her influence in supporting action research within Brantford and the Grand Erie District School Board. Now, you'll be able to find all those in terms of the Action Research Canada. So what I'm hoping that I've just stimulated is this real recognition that the future of action research in Canada rests on each one of us taking the responsibility for researching our practice with that question, how do I improve what I'm doing? And then offering it to others for validation to strengthen the validity of your explanation of your educational influence in the learning of others. And if you can get that accreditation for your embodied knowledge that you have as educators, I'm saying that you'll be enhancing professionalism not only within Canada, but you'll be able to share this with action researchers throughout the world. So I'll stop there as, if you like, my 10 minutes just to hopefully stimulate some discussion for the day. And I hope it goes really well for you. Thank you.
Thank you.